Since the 1500s, the Parliament of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth elected their kings, although this wasn't a major problem initially. As the empire declined, foreign powers began to corrupt the system. Then, at the beginning of the 18th century, the Polish-Lithuanian Empire was involved in the Great Northern War, during which the Saxon King of Poland, Augustus II, was ousted by the Swedish and replaced by a Polish nobleman, Stanislav. Although Augustus returned to the throne after the war, Stanislav remained a contender. He had a powerful ally in Louis XV of France, his father-in-law. However, Poland's neighbours, Russia, Prussia and the Holy Roman Empire, refused to accept a potential Franco-Polish alliance. So in 1732 they signed an agreement to back Manuel of Portugal as the successor to Augustus. Augustus II eventually died in 1733, and in a show of strength Austria began massing troops along the border. Nevertheless, in August, Stanislav was elected king. But there was another contender, Augustus' son Frederick August II, who could not take part in the election due to the law banning a foreign claimant, appealed to the Austrians and Russians for help, and in exchange for renouncing territorial claims they agreed and marched a large army into Poland. Together with the backing of some Lithuanian magnates, they proclaimed him King Augustus III in October. Angered Louis XV quickly declared war on Saxony and Austria. At the beginning of the war, Russia was preoccupied with crushing Stanislav's armies in Poland. Plus, Britain, Austria's old ally, chose to remain neutral as they saw Austria as the aggressor. So despite some limited support from Prussia and other states of the Holy Roman Empire, Austria was isolated in the west. France, on the other hand, was successful in gaining allies who hoped to expand into territory Austria took during the Spanish War of Succession. Spain, who wanted Naples, and Savoy, who wanted Mantua. So with the outbreak of hostilities in Italy, the armies of France and Savoy took Austria and Milan in November. But distrust in their leadership prevented the armies from moving into Mantua and blocking Austria's Alpine Pass. Meanwhile, in the Rhineland, the French were quickly able to invade the Duchy of Lorraine before the campaigning stopped for the winter. In the east, Austria's allies were having more success. Russia, who had captured Warsaw, were able to take Danzig once the campaigning restarted in spring, forcing Stanislav to flee to France. Some Polish nobles remained loyal to Stanislav and formed the Confederation of Zhukov. They rose up against the Russians and fought for a couple years, but without international support they were crushed in 1736. Back in the Rhineland, the French continued to push the Austrians back slowly, capturing Philipsburg in July. In Italy, the Austrians with fresh reinforcements advanced on Parma, but they were crushed at the Battle of San Pietro. Then in September, a second Austrian advance was repelled at the Battle of Guastalla. So after a year of costly battles, the northern Italian front remained unchanged. But there was a breakthrough in southern Italy in 1734. A large Spanish army under the command of the current Duke of Parma and future King of Spain, Charles III, marched through the Papal States and into Austrian Naples relatively unopposed. By November, after months of sieges, the Austrian defences collapsed in the region, putting Spain in the control of the south of Italy. The campaigning once again stopped for the winter, giving both sides time to receive thousands of reinforcements from their allies. In northern Italy, the Spanish joined France and Savoy, while in the Rhineland the Russians joined the Austrians. When the campaigning began again in spring, the French marched on Mainz, but a combined Austrian and Russian army was able to halt the advance and drive them back. Meanwhile in Italy, France and her allies tried to lay a siege to Mantua, but although Savoy claimed Mantua at the start of the war, Spain began to lay claims to it. So with no guarantees of receiving Mantua, Savoy withdrew from the front. This gave the Austrians the opportunity to push forward and retake Milan towards the end of the year. Both sides, now unable to make a breakthrough and unwilling to continue the war, made peace in late 1735. However, the peace could only be ratified in 1738. Stanislav had to admit defeat of Poland and recognise Augustus as the king, so France made Stanislav the new Duke of Lorraine, on the grounds it would be passed on to the King of France on his death. Austria agreed to give the Duke of Lorraine the Grand Duchy of Tuscany as compensation, and Charles of Spain agreed to give Parma to Austria in exchange for Naples. But arguably the most important result of the war was the further weakening of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, and this would eventually result in the partitioning of the state a few decades later.